I'm proud to be here for the rollout of the Udall Giffords Department of Defense Energy Security Act of 2011. That's a long title. We call it DODESA as an acronym that I think rolls off the tongue. This is a revised and updated version of a bill that I introduced in the Senate last year, and I believe that it takes a number of important steps towards addressing some of our most critical national energy security challenges. I am truly pleased that I've been joined by Admiral Denny McGinn and General Steve Anderson. They're going to share their perspectives on defense energy policy in a minute. Both of these distinguished officers have spent their careers taking care of our troops and doing the work of the nation, and they truly understand the true cost of our dependence on fossil fuels. Before I introduce our guests, I'd like to take a minute or two and talk about why this is so important, this bill, for those of you who don't regularly cover the military or work with the Pentagon. Simply put, this bill addresses the military's single largest vulnerability, its dependence on fossil fuel. That dependence costs taxpayers a staggering amount of money. Each year the military spends $20 billion a year on energy, consuming a whopping 135 million barrels of oil and 30 million megawatts of electricity. It consumes more fuel and electricity every year than most countries. And when you talk about that dependency in theater, you're talking about putting service members' lives at risk. During the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, thousands of servicemen and women have been injured and killed each year in attacks on our fuel convoys. Osama bin Laden reportedly called those convoys our military's umbilical cord. And in the words of our chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mullen, saving energy saves lives. He also said energy needs to be the first thing we think about before we deploy another soldier, before we build another ship or plane. And that's why we've introduced this legislation. And I say we because this legislation is the product of a joint effort by Congresswoman Giffords' office and mine. Gabby is a great friend, and she and I introduced this bill last Congress. This year my staff's worked closely with her staff to introduce this updated version. And I want to thank, I know many of her staffers are here in attendance, and I want to say them from the bottom to them, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. This is an issue that's near and dear to Gabby. I remember her approaching me in that relentless way she has to introduce this bill on the Senate side, and I know she's eager to continue this important work. She's not particularly sentimental. I am. Today's her birthday. And so this is, I think, particularly monumental that we introduced the bill today. I'm very proud of the bill for several important reasons. First and foremost, DODESA will help the Department of Defense to cut fuel consumption and long-term costs. Secondly, it provides authorization that will expand existing renewable energy studies and pilot programs through a joint contingency-based resource security project. This project would help the service branches to share lessons learned as they study the best ways to incorporate renewable energy sources and fuel reduction initiatives such as the Marine Corps' outstanding experimental forward operating base and the Army's net zero installations. If I could, I want to be a little bit of a homer. I want to acknowledge the leadership of Fort Carson, which is in my home state of Colorado, which has been chosen as one of the two bases to participate in the Army's triple net zero pilot program. They are leading the way at Fort Carson on this, and I appreciate all of their work. So in sum, our legislation will make America more secure, will save taxpayer dollars, and it will save lives. It authorizes the development of alternative fuels and increased usage of hybrid drive systems and electric vehicles. The bill streamlines communications between agencies responsible for energy programs across the DoD and authorizes the DoD to study where the greatest potential exists for renewable energy programs. And it authorizes the DoD to study how best to incorporate smart grid technology and to work with local communities to develop contingency plans in the event of a power outage caused by cyber attacks or natural disasters. Now, there's no single solution to our energy security challenge. DODESA is not a silver bullet that will solve all of our problems. However, it's part of a silver buckshot solution that will require multiple changes in the way we do business. We owe it to our troops, the American people, to find ways to use energy smarter and more efficiently, and I believe this bill takes us in some important directions to make this a reality. So again, thank you for being here on this cool summer Washington day, and I'd like to invite Admiral McGinn to say a few words. Admiral McGinn served for 35 years with the U.S. Navy as a naval aviator, a test pilot, an aircraft carrier commanding officer, and a national security strategist. His last assignment with the Navy was Deputy Chief of Naval Operations for warfare requirements and programs at the Pentagon. He also commanded the U.S. Third Fleet, which is responsible for some 50 million square miles off the eastern and northern Pacific Ocean. He's a recognized leader on defense and energy issues, and I'm really glad he could join us. Admiral McGinn.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you very much, Senator Udall, and I congratulate you and Congresswoman Giffords for your tremendous leadership in putting this Dodessa. I thought that was a town in Texas, Dodessa. Maybe it's Odessa I'm thinking of. This is a great bill, and when you peel it all back, what it really comes down to is it's all about increasing the mission effectiveness of the wonderful men and women in uniform in all of our services. It is really, really heartening to see, as someone who served for 35 years in the uniform of our nation, that this is a focus area of energy, national security, and it has extensions to all of society that will benefit us. I say that by telling a quick story. In October of last year, India Company, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines was deployed to Afghanistan. They were deployed to one of the nastiest parts of that country and in that fight, in Sangin and Kandahar. They happened to be, as a result of the vision of the Commandant of the Marine Corps and his staff, led by Colonel Bob Charette, be equipped with renewable energy technology in the form of flexible solar blankets and for operations in the field, as well as fixed solar panels for operations in the forward operating bases, as well as a lot of energy efficiency technology. They suffered 25% casualties in the first 3 weeks that they were there. They were in a tough fight, and they found quickly that instead of just being a burden, this renewable energy technology, energy efficiency technology, made them more energy effective and more mission effective. It was all about reducing the convoys that were exposed to improvised explosive devices on the roads by 90% less fuel required for diesel generator sets because the sun was providing a lot of the power that they needed. It was all about reducing the backpack load from 25 pounds of batteries for a 3 or 4 day mission to something around 5 pounds. And Marines, in typical fashion, not wanting to have a light load, said instead of batteries, we'll carry more ammunition. And they were out there in the field really making a difference, mission effectiveness. And finally, about 2 months ago, one of the forward operating bases where this solar array was deployed was under attack by rocket-propelled grenades. Some of the grenade fragments hit one of the solar panels, and the Marines at that forward operating base didn't know that there was any damage to the solar panels. They kept producing electricity. Can you imagine if that was a diesel generator set and the size of the secondary explosion because of that? One small story to illustrate that this is all about energy effectiveness. And further, I would say if it's good enough to have the Marines deploying, and all of the services deploying energy efficiency and renewable energy technology for mission effectiveness, we ought to make solar panels on rooftops and windmills around this country the victory gardens of the 21st century. Thank you, Senator. Thank you again for your leadership.
Admiral, so well said, and again, it's an honor to have you here, and it's great to reestablish our friendship. And I think it probably goes without saying the Marines learned everything they know from sailors. So we're also been joined by Brigadier General Steve Anderson. He's a West Point grad who served for 5 years as a general officer in the U.S. Army, including 15 months as the senior U.S. and coalition logistician in Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. He obviously has a long and distinguished background. In his final military assignment, he served for 2 years on the Army staff and the Pentagon as the Director of Operations and Logistics readiness. Like Admiral McGinn, he's an outspoken advocate for reducing our military's energy reliance. General Anderson, thanks again for your leadership and for joining us.
Thank you, sir. Well, thank you, Senator. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and thanks for what you're doing for this incredible legislation that's so important. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm an energy warrior, and I tell people I was one or became one because General Petraeus made me one. I was a senior logistician. I was responsible for moving all the logistics supplies into Iraq and Afghanistan during the 5-brigade surge of 2006 and 7. And when you start to peel it back and you start realizing the incredible assets that we have devoted to moving fuel, and in particular in air conditioning our structures, you just become a believer. You understand that energy is so important and we've got to do something to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels, and that's what's so great about this legislation. It's going to hopefully push DOD to simply require energy efficiency. I mean, it shouldn't be an option. It should not be something that we think about if we have the time or the money or the inclination, and it should not be up to the operational commander on the ground. We should be empowering them from this end with policy and legislation requiring energy efficiency. Now, a famous Marine general 2 years ago out in Al Anbar province famously asked, "Release me from the tether of fuel." That was 7 years ago, okay? It hasn't happened yet. We still are holding our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines in harm's way to a tether of fuel. And with this kind of legislation, we can do something about it. It's all about what the Admiral just said, understanding that energy efficiency equals military effectiveness. That kind of policy will get us there. Of course, the effect of saving lives. You know, Deputy Secretary of Defense Bill Lynn said last month, 3,000 Americans have died executing fuel missions. I mean, think of the cost in blood that has been spilled on this mission. Of course, then there's billions that are devoted to it. And as the Senator said, $20 billion being spent on the fuel, but if you understand the fully burdened cost of fuel, the cost to deliver it to theater, to ship it to Karachi, to drive it 18 days into Bagram or Kandahar, and then out to one of the outlying facilities, I mean, it's at least $30 a gallon. Deloitte studied it and said it's 45, but I'll be conservative. And if you do the math, it's about $20 billion to air-conditioned structures in Iraq and Afghanistan. So it's saving lives, saving money, and here's some other elements to think about. Reducing targets. Every one of those 9,000-gallon fuel tankers is a target to our enemy. They make a big boom. It's a great photo op. And they can use those photos to go back to the people that fund them, the Iranians or whomever, and say, look how good we are. Look what we're doing. Give us more money to build bombs to kill Americans. So we've got to do something about that. And then I would also say that by having energy efficient structures, starting at that end and reducing our requirement, it's going to empower the renewables, the solar, the geothermals, the wind energy that we know we need. And we can look at Afghanistan as an operational energy test bed. It's an opportunity for our nation to learn things in this field, learn things that save soldiers' lives, and then bring those technologies, exploit them back here in the United States. And I didn't come up with that. Tom Friedman wrote that 3 years ago in The World's Hot, Flat, and Crowded. So we've got to do something about that. Well, let me just close by giving you a little example of how military effectiveness is directly related with energy efficiency. I wrote an op-ed in the New York Times on 12 January, and I got a lot of responses. But the most compelling was one from a Captain Sean Falcone, who had commanded a company in Najil, Fob Najil in Afghanistan. And he said, "Sir, you're right. We got to do something about this energy. I have to shut down my contingency operations for 2 days every week to go back and get my fuel. 2 of 7 days are devoted to doing nothing but going back and getting his fuel. And during that time, sir, all the bad guys that I've been fighting for the last 5 years go back and it undoes all the good I had done the previous week. And they're right back to where I was before. And I get to start all over again." Now, if that isn't testimony of the importance of this legislation, of saving lives, saving energy, and truly understanding the direct relationship between energy and efficiency, well, then I don't know what is. Thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen.
Well said by both these gentlemen. Thank you for your service, and thank you for your passion in this regard. There's just so much potential here. And General, you're right. We're going to create through DODESA and other actions that the Department of Defense will take, new energy technologies, will save money, will create jobs, will strengthen our national security. That's a trifecta I think we can all embrace. So thank you for your direct experience, your passion, and the stories you shared with us here.